In November of 2014, the Dragon Age community was rocked by not one, but two bombshell reveals. First, Flemeth, a character who'd been around since the first game and its prequels, was revealed to be the host of the elven goddess Mythal. Second, a companion in Inquisition, Solas, who was a newcomer with a secretive past, was revealed to be an ancient elf going by the name of Fen-Harel. Both of these were revealed toward the end of the game, Flemeth's coming into Act 3 and Solas in a post-credit cutscene. So it wasn't immediately known when people got their copies that these were secrets revealed in-game. Some wouldn't know for weeks afterwards, and others read spoilers from people who finished the game quickly enough. It sent shockwaves through the community. But that same post-credit cutscene had another massive surprise. Solas, upon finding Flemeth, kills her. This was a total shock to players, especially people who'd been around since Origins. Flemeth dying, being killed by a man who she claims is actually her friend, especially just after she was revealed to be hosting an elven goddess. The speculation started immediately. There had to be a reason in-game that indicated the motivation behind this sudden murder. So far, we haven't gotten anything explicit, and it's been almost 7 years since that reveal. But that isn't to say there isn't enough to form plausible theories as to why this happened. To look at potential motivations as to why Solas killed Flemeth, I'm going to be looking at a few things. This will rely specifically on a recent fan theory, as well as its world state variations, and previous interactions with Solas in Inquisition, its DLCs, and the epilogue of the Masked Empire. Taken together, I think we can plausibly predict Solas' motivations as well as potential fallout in the upcoming 4th game in the series. So strap on your tinfoil hats and let's get to speculating. So to begin, let's talk about the end credits scene from Inquisition's base game. Solas has left the Inquisition under mysterious circumstances. No one knows where he's gone or what his reasons are. All that we as players, and ostensibly our characters, know is that he was upset about the orb being broken in the final battle. We begin on Flemeth, who is using some kind of magic on what we assume is an Illuvian. She senses someone approaching and tells them that they shouldn't have provided Corypheus with their orb. She refers to them as Dread Wolf. And then we cut to Solas, and this is where everyone lost their shit the first time they played the game. Solas explains that he was unable to use it and apologizes for the mistake, but he also says that the people, elves, need him. Flemeth also apologizes and they share an embrace. And before we can even process what is happening, Solas kills Flemeth. He absorbs some kind of power from her, as well as the Illuvian, and in the process turns her into a statue. We see his eyes have a strange glow, something we know to be a trademark of him using his abilities, and the cutscene ends. I'm not going to analyze this frame by frame. I honestly don't have the time to do that, and I'm assuming everyone watching this has seen the cutscene in question multiple times. We'll get into a deeper analysis later on. But keep this cutscene in mind because we'll come back to it and why it's so incredible. And no, not the Tumblr user. For those who haven't read Masked Empire, I'm going to be spoiling pretty much the entire book, so obligatory spoiler warning. Felasan is a character in Masked Empire who serves as a mentor to Brialla. Across the book, he appears to play the various characters against each other. He is, however, ultimately supportive of Brialla when she gets control over the network of Illuvians. Brialla attempts to give him the password, but he turns her down. In the epilogue, Felasan enters a dreamer trance to speak with an entity in the Fade. He tells the entity that he wasn't able to get access to the Illuvians, something we know he did willingly. And then he tells this entity, who we now know as Fen-Harel, something interesting, that they are stronger than he believes. Before Felasan can escape the trance, Fen-Harel kills him in his sleep. The they in this statement Felasan makes is incredibly interesting. Across the book, he definitely admires Brialla's resolve and her determination to better the lives of elves of Orlais. He actively helps her to achieve this vision, so we have to presume that he shares her goals to a certain degree. But it's also interesting because, despite his loyalty to Fen-Harel, he believes that the elves of the current time have their own strengths that may differ from the ancient elves. but they are still people nonetheless, and so they're worthy of respect and a chance to life. He doesn't want them to potentially die when Fen'Harel breaks down the veil. He even has the audacity to say this to Fen'Harel's face, figuratively at least, and Solas kills him for it. This is the first time we see Solas do something that's about to become a pattern, killing those whose beliefs diverge from his own, especially when they don't agree with his plan. For 3 long years, that was all we saw of Solas. In December of 2018, however, BioWare released the hashtag Dreadwolf Rises trailer at the annual Game Awards. It wasn't very long, about 60 seconds, and didn't include much beyond a cryptic line from Solas originally found in Trespasser, along with a new mural. Fans promptly lost their collective shit. The long wait was over. We had crumbs of new content to obsess over for another 2 years when the Gamescom update dropped in October of 2020. That means there was 2 whole years of speculation over this mural. Exact details aren't known. Elven murals in-game rely on a lot of symbolism, and we don't have the full picture of Solas' plan yet. But here is what I've been able to piece together based on multiple theories. Take everything I'm about to say with a big grain of salt. I can't 100% guarantee everything about my speculation, but this is my attempt to make sense of some things. The centerpiece of this mural is the red lyrium idol from Dragon Age 2. At the time, it wasn't known, but Tevinter Nights and the recent run of comics written by Weir and De Philippis confirmed Solas' goal of obtaining the idol for some unknown ritual that will help him tear down the veil. We presume, at least. But the longer the speculation went on, the more people started paying greater attention to another detail. There is some kind of barrier surrounding the idol, and we assume that Solas is the one holding it. Whether he's releasing it or strengthening it, we don't know. However, there are these 7 nodules at the outer edges of the barrier which are intriguing. To anyone who's never played a Dragon Age game, 7 might seem like a bit of an arbitrary number, and even people who've played the game and never gotten into the lore might think the same. However, what is essential to understand is how the number of nodules are divided. 5 are darkened, while the remaining 2 are lit. These 2 numbers are essential to the series because there have been 5 total blights across Thedas' history, and of the original 7 old gods, 5 have become the archdemons that led the blight, and 2 are presumably still unfound. Suddenly, those 2 lit nodules become huge. But what does it mean for Solas? Solas isn't a liar, despite how much the fanbase loves to make jokes about it. There is arguably only one instance of Solas lying to the Inquisitor in-game, and that's after the quest Wicked Eyes and Wicked Hearts. He talks about missing courtly intrigue, and the Inquisitor can ask when the last time he was at court. Solas has then backed himself into a lie, and earns a moderate amount of disapproval in the process for forcing him to lie. So then we can assume that Solas is telling the truth when he tells the Inquisitor about Corypheus' dragon shortly after arriving at Skyhold. If he has a high enough approval, the Inquisitor can ask if the dragon is truly an archdemon and if there is some kind of connection between the orb and the dragon. Solas then literally says, "Nothing connects my people to the old gods of Tevinter." And I promise we'll get into the use of my people later because it's just fascinating. But these 2 pieces indicate a complicated picture. Yes, there is likely a connection between the old gods and the red lyrium idol. No, the old gods are not connected to the Evaneris. It's become clear throughout Inquisition that there is some kind of connection between red lyrium and how strong or weak the veil is around it. We also know from dialogue with Wynn at Ostagar in Dragon Age Origins that indicates there is an intrinsic connection between the Blight and the Fade. Something we know to be semi-true from what we learn about Corypheus and the Architect. The Chantry isn't necessarily lying about the origin of the Blight, but I think their version of the story is missing quite a bit, and hence, our picture is incomplete as a result. If Solas truly does intend to use the red lyrium idol in some kind of ritual, then how do the old gods connect to it? What does it mean if there are still 2 souls left? And how does that go back to my original point about Mythal? Assuming the red lyrium idol has a connection to the Blight, and the old gods / archdemons presumably control the Blight to a certain degree, Solas might then need the destruction of the old god's souls to control the power of the idol. And once he has control over the idol, then we can assume his ritual will be complete and he'll tear down the veil. Which leads me to... As we enter Act 3 of Origins, Morgan approaches the Warden about a ritual which would preserve the soul of the archdemon Othermiel and allow the Warden to survive. If the Warden, or Alistair, goes through with it, then the soul of Othermiel is transferred not to a Warden's body to be destroyed, but the unborn child we later know as Kieran. Here's where things get world state heavy. Technically, the soul of Othermiel is not destroyed at the end of the fifth blight like the archdemons that came before it if the ritual is completed. So, by the time we get to Inquisition, there are still 3 old god souls kicking around. Until Flemeth summons Kieran into the Fade. Flemeth takes the old god soul from Kieran, something Morrigan confirms after returning to Skyhold. However, she doesn't destroy it. She takes it into herself. She also does this out of sight, in the Fade, rather than at the altar in the Arbor Wilds. And then she disappears. She doesn't immediately go after Morrigan. She reveals her nature, takes the soul, and leaves. So when we get to that cutscene with Solas, suddenly that makes her murder all the more clear. He appears to absorb the old god's soul from Mythal's body, presumably so he can destroy it later. But if Solas and Mythal are friends, as implied by dialogue in Trespasser and the shot in the cutscene where the wolf and the dragon flank the Alluvian, why would Mythal ask her daughter to preserve the soul and take it later for safekeeping? And why does Solas kill her if the world state is one where the ritual is not completed and the soul was destroyed at the end of the Blight? I think the answer lies in both Solas and Mythal's use of the people and the case study of Felisan. Solas is pretty condescending to a Dalish Inquisitor, and just Dalish in general. He's very snide if Llewellyn is religious, often belittling their beliefs unless they happen to agree with Solas every time they talk. He also makes it no secret that he does not relate in any way to the elves of the current time. This is especially the case if the Inquisitor sides with Briala during the Wicked Eyes quest. The Inquisitor can comment by saying, "It all worked out, we get an ally, and perhaps your people get better treatment in Orlais." To which Solas responds, "My people? Oh, you mean elves. I'm sorry, I do not consider myself to have much in common with the elves." Solas doesn't think of the elves as equals. He treats them as children who don't know who or what is reality, despite the centuries they've had to develop their culture, which is unique from how ancient elves were. Compare this to Mythal. If a Dalish Inquisitor is one who encounters her during the final peace, she will literally tell them that they do the people proud. She doesn't condescend in the same way as Solas. She doesn't correct about the nature of Valisleen. She doesn't talk about how spirits are the true people and how elves are worse off without the direct connection to the Fade. This is indicative of something I think the fanbase hasn't touched on completely with Flemethal, the term used to describe the relationship between Flemeth and Mythal. Flemeth has another name she's known by, Asha Belinar, the Woman of Many Years. This is how she's known to the Dalish specifically. This is a central idea to her character. She's lived well past her original lifetime. It's literally the most important thing we learn about her in Origins. I think we've taken that for granted. Flemeth and Mythal have been united and walking the world, one separated from the Fade, for hundreds and hundreds of years. They've both had time to see the world and the cultures in it change and evolve over time. They've had dealings with people from human and elven societies, literal dealings, such as Merrick, Marathari, the Warden, and Hawk's deals. And I don't think this is an accident. I think because of all the time that she spent living with mortals, Mythal has come to realize that there is good in the world that came from the separation of waking and dreaming. I think she sees value in what the Dalish have attempted to recreate, even clumsily. I think she sees those who inhabit the world as people worthy of respect and a chance to life. I think at some point, her views diverged from those of Solas, and she no longer wants to see the same destruction of the world that he does. Like Felisan thought. Solas created the veil and went to sleep for something like 3,000 years. He didn't see the world that came from that event. He didn't see the societies spring up from it and how people who lived in those societies were just that, people. Unlike Mythal, who has seen hundreds of years of social progression. And I think that led to a decision on Flemmithal's part to oppose Solas. I think sometime after the fourth blight, they made a choice when the next blight came to preserve the soul of an old god in order to prevent Solas's ritual from ever being completed. Whether or not this was truly successful depends on the world state. I think they took the soul back once they knew Solas was awake, knowing that they had the best chance of defending it. I think they knew Solas would go after them and formulated a plan to preserve the magic of the soul somehow. And I think that even if the old god soul was destroyed, Solas knew Mythal had come to see the world differently from him, like Felason, and as a result, killed her. It's always fun to speculate about the future of a media property, especially its story elements. With the 7-year anniversary of Inquisition on the horizon and the release of teases for the next game, Dragon Age has had no shortage of time or content to speculate over. I think there's enough to form a semi-complete picture of Solas's motivations behind the killing of Mythal. Solas needs the destruction of the old god souls to complete some currently undefined ritual to tear down the veil of his own creation. Mythal at one point agreed with his plans, but because of her lengthy lifespan thanks to Flemeth's magic, her views evolved over time to where she no longer saw eye to eye with her friend. She made an attempt, successful or unsuccessful depending on individual player choice, to stop this ritual, but even then, Solas still knew of her ideological shift and did the same to her that he did to Felason. I'd love to be right, I really would. There's something fun about the idea of reading a text and correctly predicting a plot twist based on that reading. However, given the incomplete nature of the information we've been given, especially in regards to Solas and the idol and this ritual, I can't say for certain whether this theory is correct. Again, I'd like to be right, but I wouldn't be surprised if I was totally off base by some kind of reveal in the next game.